hello, hello. Welcome back to Asian Farmpreneur Podcast. This is Mirani Hari. I'm your host. And if you are new here, welcome, welcome. This is the place where spirituality, power of play, entrepreneurship, and digital technology intersect each other. In today's episode, we have Desiree Ruiz from Canada. She's a business coach. She's also a community builder. Desiree is a friend I know through our DCI program. That's the Dharma Coaching Institute, where I train for my coaching certification. I've been listening to Desiree's story when she speaks in our coaching pod, and I've been into one of her networking pod as well. But this is gonna be our very first time to interact, like talking, having like having conversation at all. So I'm very excited for this opportunity, especially because we're going to talk about decolonizing her identity as a second generation Filipina or someone having this Philippines heritage. And this is a topic that's very close to my heart as well, because especially if being a diaspora as well as growing Asian as well, it's not a prevalent thing outside in the mainstream media, but it's something that we started to realize. Like platforms like this have started to come up, especially in the recent past 3 2 3 years. And being from Indonesia and the Philippines, there's similarities as well, similar backgrounds. I came from a Christian background as well, and she was a Catholic as well. So I feel like we can relate, and which is why I'm excited to have Desiree in our episode. Well, Desiree, thank you so much for being here in our Asian Fempreneur podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, and I've always seen you in our DCI calls, and I thought, oh, this lady has a story, and this is
Mhm.
someone that, like, okay, yeah, I need to, like, I want to know her story. But to be honest, we haven't even got a chance to
I
speak
know
until
we
recently.
were never in a pod together, but I saw you speak also, and I was like, oh, there's something there. So I'm happy to connect to you finally.
Yeah, likewise as well. Thank you. And okay, to start off, I ask my guest this question. What would make your, how does your aligned self look like to you?
Hmm. How does my aligned self look like to me? Um, that's a beautiful question. I would say my aligned self looks like the at peace and at calm with herself, and grounded in her body and grounded in her intuition and grounded in her authority and grounded in her spirit.
Mm, I like how you use the word grounded here. Do you
Mm.
mind exploring more about what grounded means to you?
Yeah, I've been exploring this recently. I mean, I'm definitely sure we're going to get into this later, just because this is an Asian podcast, right? And and most Asians, we have similar upbringings, to do and to keep our heads down and to be very much in our heads. And so grounding, and I've spent the last maybe 8 years now learning how to ground in my body and trust my body, right? And lead with my body versus leading with the logical decisions, leading with what the expectations are or have been. So the groundedness for me is again this feeling of trusting myself, my body, my spirit, first, and then and then and then be open to outside opinion.
Mm, I like I like how you frame it, and I like the way you use the word expectation, because I mean, yes, we have lots of expectations, whether it's social, whether it's cultural, or even family expectation. That's like our daily staple, I guess.
Right? Where your ancestors are from?
Yes. So I'm from Indonesia. I'm born in Indonesia, but my heritage is from China. So
Mm.
my grandparents immigrated from mainland China to Indonesia. My parents are born in Indonesia, and I'm born in Indonesia. But now I'm an immigrant myself in the UK.
Yeah. So again, so there's the Asian experience and then the Asian diasporic experience as well. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. So for your listeners, I'm second generation Filipina Canadian. So calling in from Chuchagi, which is colonially known as Montreal. My roots are from Cebu, Philippines.
Oh, from Cebu. Okay.
Have you
Have you?
been to the Philippines?
No, actually, but it's interesting because I did my undergrad in Japan, and there are lots of exchanges or internship opportunity in Cebu. I've heard my friends who's going there, and then they say, "Oh, it's so nice. The beach is nice, especially."
Yeah, I've only been to the Philippines once when I was 8 years old, and it was such a culture shock for me. And then I never had the opportunity to go again because the trip is so far, right, from Canada. And interesting enough, because you're from Indonesia, my second time in Asia was to Bali, and loved it. Completely fell in love with Bali and the local Balinese folks there, and it gave me this taste of wanting to go to the Philippines because I didn't necessarily have it before because it was such a culture shock when I was younger, and the idea of going to the Philippines just didn't feel aligned at the time, and it took me going to Bali and Thailand to now being ready and excited for a trip back to the Philippines.
Hmm.
So thank you to your people.
Oh, you're welcome. I okay. Is there a specific reason why back then, when you were a kid, you don't feel aligned to go back to the Philippines?
Hmm. Well, I mean, number one was the financial aspect, right? It is a pretty big trip. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe if the opportunity would have um, presented itself to me, I mean, I wouldn't have had a choice, right? We would have went. It's just the financial aspect. It is inexpensive and it's a long trip from
Mm.
Canada. And then as I got older and was able to travel, there was something that I felt if I went to the Philippines, there was this idea of I would have to um, fulfill family obligations and I wouldn't be able to explore the country on my own. Um, so then it wasn't, the place that I was as excited about versus, Thailand and Bali. I was lucky enough to go to yoga retreats there again. So to be able to experience it on my terms, on what I wanted to do, versus the Philippines, it felt like obligations. And again, going back to what I said earlier, the expectations, the obligations. So it just kept me away from going, which I regret.
Okay, it's okay. This is very interesting because it's like that, isn't it? When you go for your own pure personal enjoyment or purpose, yeah, it's okay. But then when it comes to having this, especially family expectations, then it starts to feel like I don't want to put a word to you in your mouth, but I feel like it becomes a bit of a burden.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and and I also I didn't really have connections with my family in the Philippines too, right? So I was very disconnect. I mean, I was born in Canada, so I would hear stories about the Philippines, and oftentimes with immigrant parents, it's it there was an interesting relationship with me with the Philippines up until recently. I didn't feel connected to the Philippines. My mom, would always, send stuff back home to the family. So there was this feeling of, what about me? Mom doesn't see me. She only sees the family in the Philippines. And then it took me having to go to Indonesia to see how life was and to see the simplicity of life and to see how much, because to me, growing up and growing up in Canada, you hear my mom is paying for them, my cousins, to go to school. And you take a kid like me that grew up in the Western world, you're jealous of the kids in the Philippines, right? There's like a jealousy, or there's this, my mom is not present, my mom is doing everything for the family back home and less present for us. But then it took me going to Indonesia, where it was like, oh my God, because it's so important, because school is, I think one person said school is free, but you have to pay for the uniform. So my mom was helping to pay for the uniforms. And again, it took me having to see it modeled in another country to realize how selfish I was as a child, and self-absorbed, right? And just wanted my mother. So I had to really see it and understand it to comprehend, because my mom, Asian parents don't really, at least my Asian parents didn't use as many words growing up, right? So you're just like creating a story in your head. So to me, the story was, my mom is always working, or my mother is not present, or as present as I would like her to be, because she's doing everything for the people back in the Philippines. So it created this interesting dynamic for me as a second generation Filipina Canadian.
Hmm. A bit straight question. Were you resentful of the maybe your family in the Philippines, or that Filipino side of yours, because your mom was very much focused on them instead of yours?
I definitely, there was a bit of something. I was interviewed on by a friend of mine, and she wrote this piece on me, and so I was able to articulate it. And again, my parents worked really, really hard. Asians don't sit around and talk about feelings. Asians don't ask, like, how do you feel? And it's like, do, work, 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 play the piano, go to church, go to school, and it's like, get good grades. And then when you see other families, your other white friends, and their parents are present, and their parents are, it's human nature to compare, right? So to me, I was comparing. And Filipinos, I don't know if they do this with Indonesians or in your country, but a lot of Filipinos in North America send boxes back home. And so it's called the balikbayan box, and it's a big box, and they send it like every 3 or 4 months. And my mom we would always have a balikbayan box, and she would send stuff, and she would send towels and chocolates and cookies and food. And but then I'd be like, oh, can I have that? Can I have that chocolate? And again, it sounds so juvenile as I say it, but my feelings when I was growing up were valid, right? And I would ask for, the Kit Kat bar, and she's like, no, that's supposed to go to the Philippines. And then when I went to the Philippines, when I was 8 years old, anything I had, my parents were like, give that to your cousins. So then I go there, and they're like, give it to your cousins. And I totally understand where they're coming from now, right? But as a kid, you're like, but that's my stuff. You know what I mean? But what about me? So to answer your question, yes, I definitely, maybe less, I just didn't understand it. And I would say there was a little bit of a resentment because I didn't understand it.
Hmm. That's a very that's a very powerful one. And okay, I'm reading on the list of the questions, and I feel like we kind of already talked about, well, your early start as well, and then about your experience. I wonder, how were you before and after? Because we were gonna talk about this decolonization, right? And
Mm,
decolonization itself is such a big word.
yeah, it is a very big word. It is a very
Mm.
big word. Do you want me to share like how it maybe unfolded?
Yeah, sure. Yes, please.
Yeah. So the decolonization for me, and for I mean, again, such a loaded question. So just some context. I grew up in a Filipino household. Filipinos are very, very Catholic and Christian, so it was all around the church. And so for many, many years, I identified myself. I grew up with a very loving Filipino community, and it was only throughout my years, as I got older and a little bit more disconnected from the Filipino community, um, that I always associated my Filipino identity with being Catholic. So to me, it was like, to be Filipino, you are Catholic. And then as I got older, I went to church my whole life, still do sometimes on holidays. But again, as I got older, I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel as comfortable, or I felt shamed a lot, but again, didn't have the words to articulate it. So to me, being Filipino was to be Catholic, right? And then I disconnected myself, my 20s and my 30s. And then during the pandemic, when everyone was, diving into histories and diving, in North America, a lot of people were, there's a lot of history and a lot of documentaries coming out about American history and Black history. And I remember thinking, what is my history? And so what are the facts? What was I told growing up is, the Philippines was colonized by Spain for almost 500 years. And before that, Japan was there. So we were very much colonized, by different countries. Um, and so growing up, I would lead conversations by saying, "Hi, my name is Desiree Ruiz. I'm Filipino, but my great grandfather was Spanish." I would, but think about that. When you think about that, why does that matter? Why am I saying that? Why am I proud? Why am I being proud about this 1/8 proximity to whiteness? Where is that coming from? Right. And so again, never didn't even realize my unconscious, you know, bias and my unconscious, the things that were just naturally coming out of me, right? Until the pandemic, until I had more space, until everybody was diving into their histories. And, we were all online, and I got curious, or there was actually a picture that came out about, and it was a picture of the Babaylan, and in the Filipino pre-colonial world, the Babaylans, they still exist to this day, but the Babaylans were the shamans, the healers, the leaders of communities. And it was this beautiful picture of a Babaylan, and the visual was so beautiful, and just in front of her community, healing the community. And no, and not she's not a female or a male. Again, just this beautiful non-binary healer and leader in the community. And I remember seeing this, and the hashtag was hashtag Philippines, hashtag decolonization, and hashtag pre-colonial Philippines. And I was like, huh? And when I often explain and people are like, and then so I rabbit holed, thank God for hashtags, rabbit hold down hashtag Babaylan, hashtag pre-colonial Philippines. And then I just started learning about the Filipinos before colonization. And what I like to explain is, like, growing up Christian, I was told, and again, I was told 4 chapters in a 20 chapter book, right? That the world started when Spain arrived, or the world started when Japan arrived, or the world started when the US arrived, right? Which, yeah, that's a huge part of our history. But I never connected to that. And I never felt connected to that identity. And I always felt, there's something like, there's I deep down inside, again, in my intuition, I knew that there was more, but I didn't know where to look. Never felt connected to it. I had always felt connected to spirituality, but I couldn't explain it. Never felt that it was part of me. And then again, the rabbit hole that I went down made like made my peripheral vision, like, and then it gave me, like, it released chapters 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right?
Mm.
And then I started to learn about, like, who we were before colonization. I'm not erasing this part, but I never felt connected to this. So I started to get curious about this part. And then I started to connect to my culture and my, and learning that we were always very spiritual, very grounded in nature, very, very much what I saw in that picture. And then it's been such a beautiful rabbit hole ever since. And so that's been my decolonization journey. Again, not erasing any part of history, but just reconnecting to a different part of history that was never told to me.
Mm.
And again, with no malice, it was just never exposed to me, right? Because this
Mhm.
one was just, the 500 years, or, of our history was so much louder, right?
Mhm.
Much, much louder. Fine, great. But now I'm curious about, like, the 5,000 years or the 1,000 years before that, right? And that's
Mhm.
when it allowed me and gave me the gift of reconnecting with other Filipinas, Filipinos, Filipinexes that have also been on the journey. And it's really brought me back to my culture, with a deeper sense of groundedness and pride, and connected to my spirit, connected to my ancestors, has fueled my purpose as well. I recently opened co-founded a nonprofit organization, that supports and serves the mental health and well-being of Filipinx youth. Because that's rooted in decolonization as well, right? Not trying to replace anybody, but building a space and programming for other folks of all ages to, be held as they go through this journey as well.
Mm, so basically, you had this realization, and then like, okay, this is like we are so much more than our past hundreds of years, and you just want to share that realization with other fellow Filipinas, Filipinos.
Yeah, and going back, as I mentioned earlier, too, how I would lead the conversation. You asked me what was I before colonization and after colonization. Before
Mm-hmm,
colonization, before decolonizing, I would lead conversations. In white spaces, maybe I would say, "Hey, my name is Desiree. I'm Filipino. My roots are from the Philippines, but my great grandfather was Spanish." And then decolonizing made me realize, why am I so proud of this tiny, tiny eighth? And again, it's this proximity to whiteness, and it's this proximity, this pride of, again, the proximity to whiteness. And I'll just leave it at that because that's another loaded topic. But realizing that I was so proud to share, or this tiny tiny little bit of this proximity to whiteness, because I mean, that did, if you look at history, right, it keeps you safe, right? When you're closer to the white blood, it keeps you safe. Whereas now, as I've decolonized, I no longer say that. Don't discount that part of my blood and my lineage, but I'm so grounded in, like, being Filipino is enough. And at our nonprofit, which is called Centre Capua, our tagline is, "We're all Filipinos are Filipino enough." Because when you're heavily colonized, and what is colonization? Colonization is, I mean, power, right? Colonization is another country fighting and telling, it's colonization is oppression, right? And it's basically, I'm going to take what I want, you're not good enough, we are better than you, to sum it up, right? And so if you take the Philippines, who's a nation that's been heavily colonized, right? Uh, and told, "You're not enough, you're not good enough, we are better, you're not good enough." What happens what happened to our ancestors has trickled down to us, right? And so there was a lot of not enoughness. So me saying I was Filipino wasn't enough. I needed to add that cherry on the top, that, "Oh, but I do have some white blood, so please see me," right? Versus now, pre decolonizing, I'm like, nope, being Filipino is enough.
mm. Oh my gosh, what you said just made me reflect on myself as well.
On your what?
uh, what you just said, it makes me reflect on myself as well, because it's like that, right? Like, even in my introduction with you, like, I'm from Indonesia, but my grandparents are from mainland China, and etc. etc. So um it's like having to add that explanation even after, like, you're more than just Indonesian, you could say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, Indonesia and the Philippines, there's so many similarities too, right? I mean, we're
Yes.
Austronesian. I believe Indonesians are Austronesian, like the roots are Austronesian as well. We were all in the same waters, right?
Yes.
But who created the divisions?
Yes. No, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I agree, because like even when I meet other Filipinos or Filipinas and say that they are speaking in Tagalog, let's say, at one point of time, because I was from there behind, it was like, it sounds like Indonesian, but I could
Mhm.
not recognize the words. It's I mean, it's similar.
Yeah, and that's why going to Indonesia really, like, sparked something inside of me again, because it gave me the space to go there as me, not as like this family member visiting family. And then
Hmm.
when I went in Indonesia, everyone thought I was Indonesian, and a lot of people thought I was from there. And then I remember I felt like I look like everybody there, so I didn't feel othered. So it was a really beautiful experience. And what I loved about Bali was, like, again,
Hmm.
the ceremonies, the temples, like, just feeling that sparked something inside of me, right?
Hmm.
Versus the church or visiting churches or having to go to mass. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, I was really connected to the spirituality aspect of it, and seeing people that look like me do it as well. And then even with, some of the patterns, the fabrics, very similar to the pre-colonial Filipino indigenous fabric. So again, all interrelated and connected.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned about the whole spirituality, the being more connect, being able more to connect with spirituality in Bali as opposed to the spirituality in the church. I wonder, like, what's the experience here?
It's the spirituality practice. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, again, it's connecting to me and my intuition and what
Mm-hmm.
and my spirit. And I also, I'll go as far as like connecting with my ancestors and just creating that stillness to listen and to feel, which is not a muscle that I've been trained, that I've been using, that I use effortlessly, if anything,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So to sit in silence is still uncomfortable. To listen to my intuition, I've gotten much better, but it's not comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
to not lead with your mind. So spirituality practices is, again, is trusting myself, trusting my first thought, trusting my first choice, trusting that
Mm-hmm.
butterfly in my stomach, trusting, when something doesn't feel right. um
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, yes, and then there's the meditation and all of that, which I try to do. I don't have anything specific, but I would say that the practice is really just tuning into my body, if anything,
Mm-hmm.
tuning into my body and what my body is trying to tell me, and trusting that
Mm.
and building that muscle and building, reconnecting those neurons
Yeah.
and blood flows, because again, I always tell my clients, like, our bodies know everything. We have everything that we need inside of us. All of the answers are inside of us. They're just, the fuses are disconnected. So again, what I've been intentionally doing through spirituality and through stillness and through everything else is really just intentionally reconnecting those muscles and those meridians and those
Mm-hmm.
lines with my heart, my body, my soul.
Mm. Would this be something that, especially, it kind of touched upon your decolonization experience as well? So you said before that being a Filipina means like being a Catholic before, and now that with you're being more, actually more embracing, now that you've embraced this part of you, like the spiritual part of you, which can be a bit different from Catholicism.
Hmm,
Hmm.
completely.
Yes, I wonder if you would like to share about that experience, because I'm I'm also from a Christian community and Catholic as well. So depending on where you're from, it can be, it can be quite, it can be a strict community.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just like for the record, like I'm not bashing Christianity at all, and my
Mm-hmm.
mother is like uber religious, and and my decolonization journey actually helped us meet halfway, right? Because she's been watching me reconnect with my roots and asking her questions and be curious, and like, so it's actually brought us closer because I'm, courting her and asking her things, and she'll always drop, do you want to go to church? And I'm like, no, thank you, and this is come with age too, right, and time. And then we had a beautiful conversation. She said, okay, if you're not Catholic, because I think I even said it, which is huge, right? I said, I don't connect with the church. I'll still go for holidays, I'll still go to make you happy, I just don't longer connect to it. And she said, well, what are you then? And what do you believe in, as long as you believe in something? And I told her, I believe in nature, in spirituality. And so I think it's really, again, the religion. I have nothing against religions, but I think, you have to. It's a good base. It's a good base. It's always a good thing to be part of a community so that, we're not meant to do anything alone, but
Mm.
it's to be able to find you and connect with yourself too is really
Mm.
important.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because I grew up, yeah, very, very strict, very, very strict. Rosary every weekend, rosary every weekend, church. And then a little less as I got older, but then now, she didn't force it on me, obviously with age, but it was always there. It was always that guilt, or like anytime I would call her asking for help, the quick answer is, oh, you pray, you pray, you pray. But now and before it would irritate me so much, but now I'm like, that is her form of meditation. Like
Mm.
prayer for my mom is her form of meditation. So whenever she says that, it's still like, it still does this to me, but I understand again, this is her form, right? This is her, it, like
Mm.
it trickled through generations. Christianity is, there's nothing wrong with it. Catholicism, Filipinos are very, very religious. It is their form of it brings everybody together. It does give them something to believe in, which is beautiful. It's just over time, again, that's not who I am. And as a Filipino, being Filipino is no longer associated to being Catholic. It's being associated to a culture that is so rich and spiritual and matriarchal, fierce people, very connected to nature and spirituality and rituals. And like that is the pride that I'm grounded in now. Versus before, I was like, yeah, Filipino, yeah, my roots in Spain, yeah, like it's confusing, very, very confusing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm. That's a very beautiful answer, Desiree. I'm glad you manage it. Again, this is not bashing about any religions, right? Because again, it's all about understanding that if we look, at least this is how I look this, right? Like at the surface level, yes, it looks different, different belief system here and there, different languages as well, or different terminologies. But if we step or like, if we look even deeper beyond that, it's pretty much the same thing. It's just different wordings.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And again, it's what I've learned in my decolonization journey. Again, I'm not here to bash my mom or my grandmothers for their belief in Christianity. That is again what grounds them. It doesn't have to ground me. And that is again coming back to me being grounded in who I am and what feels good to me, right? Which is again, as you know, growing up Asian is not easy to go
Yeah.
against the family and the parents. So,
Yeah. And I would like to applaud you for that, for being able to stand your ground, to understand that I don't connect with this part, but I still love you guys. So that's an inspiration, Desiree.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, I I didn't do it alone. Like reconnecting again, I'm a huge community organizer here in Montreal, and like a huge advocate for the power of community and not doing it alone. And you know, I was lucky enough that when I started my decolonization journey, I was held and connected with so many others that had already been doing this for years. So I was able to be, because it gets very confusing, for anybody listening that might be like interested in start, like it, when you start to see the world, um, or open again your eyes and your lenses and start to get the different chapters of the book, it's not always so beautiful, right? And it could be very hard, and it could bring up a lot. So my journey was, I believe, more pleasant because I was able to do it in community, and still to this day, I am able to do it in community.
Mm. So as an entrepreneur yourself, how would you relate spirituality in terms of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, the same thing. The being grounded in who you are and what you want, right? And to just be able to catch yourself when you're doing things for validation, you're doing things to keep up. Like, do you actually, my clients, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs, and it's, a question is like, do you actually, like, where is this coming from? Do you actually want to do this? Are you doing this? I always love to tell people. So when I went into university, I went in, I got accepted into the accounting program, and I knew I wanted to be in business. I got accepted in accounting. And the story that I was telling myself was, I'll get a job. It's safe. Again, this complacentness, right? And it's safe. I'm going to be okay after graduating. But then a year in, I said, this is not me at all. It's not connected with my personality. I'm miserable. It doesn't feel good. And then I took a year off, and then I went back in marketing. But then everyone said marketing in 2005 was very different than marketing now. But everyone said, oh, but it's not going to guarantee you a job like accounting. But I said, yeah, but again, spirit or intuition was like, but this feels better. This is more fun. This is more aligned with your personality. So I did do that. So now tying it back to entrepreneurship, it's being able to connect with the things that bring me joy, right? And the
Mhm.
why behind my business, the why behind who I want to work with, the why behind how I want to serve and show up, versus doing it again to be validated, to be seen, to make somebody else happy.
You said something very important there. How you want to serve other people versus how you want to be validated by others.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the valid being wanting to be validated by others again comes is deeply rooted in how I grew up, right? As in a child of immigrants, you want to be, we are again, no bad intention from my parents, but most of us were praised for doing, right? We were validated for doing. We weren't validated necessarily for choosing joy. We were validated for doing the things that would keep us safe, right? Validated accounting, validation, marketing. I don't understand it. It's not going to keep. So it's like in the minds of parents or immigrant parents, or I'm going to, go deeper of people that were heavily colonized. It's be safe, be complacent, keep your head down, choose the thing that's going to keep you safe, right? um how I think your question was how I want to serve versus how I want to be validated, or
It was just pointing out something that you said. That's I feel like, oh, that's a goal there. Like how you want to choosing something like what you like, what your joy is, and how you want to serve versus how like
doing it for
versus
validation. Yeah, doing it
yes.
for validation. Yeah, which is again is huge. And and taking it from a business aspect, it's like, okay, I'm going to do it for the money, or I'm going to do it because it brings me joy. And again, the joy part always might take longer, right? And it's hard because you're like, this other side is like so shiny, and it's like, oh, I can just make money. But then how many times do you hear people choosing the things for validation, and then 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, they're like, why did I do that? I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't even know what I want. And and when I coach people, it's one of the first questions is like, okay, what did you like growing up? Who are you? What do you enjoy? Yes, we know you're good at accounting or software or this and that, and that's wonderful. You have all the accolades and all the rewards, but like, what do you actually enjoy? And I love to dive into that with people, because we're so conditioned, and so there's so many layers of expectations from other people. And oftentimes, at least I've seen this with clients, that no one's ever asked, and this is my experience too, no one's ever asked us what we actually want and enjoy. And so it's again to just take that time to ask yourself, like, well, what do I enjoy? What do I really enjoy? Forget about being Filipino, forget about being the daughter of, forget about being the mother of. It's like, what do I really enjoy? And to start playing with it and testing out.
Your story reminds me of an episode where I was calling. So I'm an entrepreneur in residence for Lancaster University, and that means that I would come in sometimes to help with some modules. And this was a module for the MBA students about entrepreneurial challenges. And boy, that was a very different atmosphere
Mm.
because, like, you can feel it. Like when it's MBA student, it's like these are people who come from corporate backgrounds, and they're very used with this whole of, if we want to talk masculine feminine, it's like this masculine energy of very focused, very structure. What's your number? What's your projection? And so
Yeah.
on and so forth. And the task was to find a problem that they want to solve and come up with a solution, basically, and start a venture, like a startup or entrepreneur venture based on that. And as I was talking with different groups, it's very interesting because the question that I sense they are trying to ask, or that what they want to know, is that how do you like this idea? Like, they're asking for validation, and second, would this generate the most money? Um, Something that's more revenue based.
Hmm.
And well, sadly to say, I didn't answer them those questions because again, I don't know their field, like that part, right? It's all about, well, do you enjoy it or not? Because if it may look on paper like it looks very great, it looks stellar, it's amazing, but then if you don't enjoy the whole
Hmm.
thing, then what's the point?
Yeah. I mean, business is so beautiful, right? Because I think like, and then it's also, there's so many entrepreneurs in my life, and I commend them for like seeing an opportunity and going for it, even if it's not bringing them joy. It's the opportunity, that says, oh, this is business opportunity. Oh, there's this is happening. There's a whole opportunity. So there, and again, so many beautiful things have been brought into this world because of these ideas and these opportunities. That's wonderful. But then it's so masculine, and it's also like more. There's like this, I'm not going to get into it now, but this capitalism and like grow and conquer and take more, like, and that's great for some, but again, the decolonization journey has also made me more aware to these things, more curious. Again, it's like, why is there such this need to like conquer, and take opportunities? And again, I'm not, this doesn't apply to everything, but
Mhm.
um yeah, there's just this, again, this mentality of like, take opportunity, more, if anything, versus i'm I'm becoming more grounded in like simplicity and more like circular economies, and like being more mindful of the world, and how we want to leave the world for the next 7 generations, and taking the opportunity, the overconsumption is just something that doesn't sit the same way, in my decolonization journey, or sits very differently.
Hmm. Being mindful on the sustainability part of it, and not just environment wise sustainability, but also whether the practice is sustainable enough for long term, or is it just for short term gain.
Exactly. And we've lived in this we live in a culture where it's like quick fixes. Just again, this take culture, where it's again opportunity, take more money. It's never enough. It's never enough money. It's never enough. So then we're constantly overworking. Everyone's overworking themselves. They don't have time to find joy. So it's this vicious cycle, which again, to each their own. But I've reached this point in my life and my career where I'm like, no, like, let's somehow go back to more simplicity, and somehow go back to taking more time and trusting also, right?
Mhm. Okay, Desiree. When we talk about entrepreneurship, and you're a coach, you coach entrepreneurs. You also like you founded a nonprofit as well. And when I see your website the other day, like I feel that one of the most prominent offering you give is human design.
Yeah. Yeah. Human design is this entry. It's this really fun entry point.
Hmm.
Because essentially, I like to help people find their purpose, or reconnect with reconnect and reclaim to the things that bring them joy, which is tied to their why, their purpose, and the entry point. or the playful entry point is human design. And for those listening that don't know what human design is, it's a mix of Eastern and Western sciences. It's a combination of the I Ching, the Kabbalah tree of life, the chakra system, and astrology. And it's such a powerful tool that helps us understand energy, right? It helps us understand energy, and it gives it helps people just understand who they are in general, right? So again, it is this beautiful tool that I use with my clients that are very much in their head and very much think logically all the time and have been brought up and conditioned and validated for thinking logically. It helps me. It's a visual tool. There's an actual chart that's printed, and it helps me help my clients visually understand how they soak in energy, how they give off energy, where their gifts are, where their purpose, clues as to their purpose. It's such a beautiful map to self-awareness for yourself, and it also helps you bring harmony into your other relationships and into your business as well. So yes, I do human design mentorship teachings, readings, and it's so much fun. And it's such a beautiful tool that's helped me as a parent as well. So with human design, I work
Mhm.
a lot with entrepreneurs and parents, because a lot of parents want to understand their children, and they'll come to me and they're like, I want to understand my kid, but then I'll never do a human design parenting reading without doing both the parent and the kid.
Hmm.
So then it helps me explain to the parent. And again, I'm speaking from my own experience. I got into human design to better understand my child, and it's gifted me with so much understanding of myself, how I show up as a parent, as a co-parent, as an entrepreneur, as a friend, to understand again the difference, our different energies, right? Because again, human design is a tool that reminds us that we're all energetically designed differently, right? But society, somewhere along the line, society told us that we are, work 9 to 5, go to university, do XYZ to succeed, versus human design again is bringing us back to another way of thinking and reminding us that no, just like the animals in a jungle or in a forest, they all have different access to energy. So do humans. So human design is a beautiful tool that helps us see that.
The conditioning, basically being aware of our innate design, as well as being aware of the conditionings that we've received throughout our life.
What's your human design energy type?
Yeah, I'm a pure generator, 4/6,
Nice.
sacral authority.
Nice. Yeah. So beautiful. I'm a mental projector 1/3, and my daughter is a manifesting generator 6/2. And again, she's emotional. I'm a mental projector. So yeah, again, for those that have no idea what we're talking about, um, it just helps you understand your energy and the energy of those around you. So I understand based on where my daughter's chart is defined and not defined, and where she has gates. It's like she has a lot of emotions, right? And as a parent, sometimes it gets frustrating, sometimes we don't have time, but I'll always go back and I'm like, it's helped me build more compassion for her, with her, and hold space for her emotions, because I'll always think back to her chart and I'm like, okay, she has that, and that is her gift, and that is her superpower. It might take her a little bit longer, and she might have certain tantrums and might be too attached to things, but it's on her chart. So there's always this back and forth, and I always refer back to her chart. And again, it's gifted me with so much more patience and compassion towards my daughter and everybody else, and her father, and so many other people in my life, right? And from a business perspective, again, it is a tool that helps me and my clients lead from. I'll always, again, it's an invitation. I'm like, hey, why don't you look? What did you like? Oh, based on this, these are some clues as to your gifts. And then my clients were like, oh, I used to like that when I was growing up. Or, oh, yeah, I do like to speak. Oh, I've never used my voice. So then we unpeel the onion together. And it's just really, really cool what shows up on the chart.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of human design, and I read human design for my clients as well. So it's interesting because um, let's say one person, like one client, like he's so used of being labeled in a um like a medical term, but then understanding a human design term, it's like, okay, like it, it allows you the tool to look at the certain situation without labeling them, but also like,
Mm.
oh yeah, well, it is what it is, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just want to share, like I had a client who I did an intro to human design workshop and she came on, she thought she was a manifester, but then she double checked her chart and she entered her. So you need your birthday and your time of birth and place of birth. She entered all of that information and then turns out she was a reflector. And so the reflector energy type, soaking in energy, like really, really sponges for energy, right? For anybody that's listening. So really, really sponges for energies, good and bad. And she was, I think, in her 40s or 50s. And then when I explained to her the reflector type and that they're soaking in, they're really chameleons because they're soaking in so much energy. And that sounds cool for some, but it's debilitating for others because you feel so much and you think that it's yours, right? And when I started explaining that to the group, she instantly started crying, and she told me, she was like, "My whole life I've been on antidepressants. I've always felt so much. Always thought something was wrong with me. Thank you for making me realize how much of it was not actually mine." And then so together we worked, with energetic hygiene and how she can cleanse that, or how she can, I helped her build this awareness of like deciphering whether it was hers or not. And like I said, you're still going to cry, but now can you now say, "Oh, no, walked into the room and they were having, I picked up energy from somebody else. It's not mine." So it's like less, hopefully debilitating. I know in my experience, it's less debilitating, all of the feels that I feel since understanding human design.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so now you see her, she's in nature all the time. She has plants, like she's integrated the spiritual and energetic hygiene into her day, and she no longer attaches herself to all of the energies that she's picked up. But again, this is like 4 decades of picking up things, right? And living her life and thinking that something was wrong with her. Oftentimes with my client sessions with human design, everyone thinks something's wrong with them. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with you. Again, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, it's, and actually this is a very important piece of puzzle as well, because I so I joined DCI. Like, one reason I joined DCI, the Dharma Coaching Institute we're on together, was to understand how can I tie my multiple interests, multiple seemingly unrelated interests together. And it has been helpful, especially when we delve deeper on human design as well, because my my identity center was undefined.
Hmm.
So there is this constant need of finding, what's my purpose? What am I here to do? And like that fixation is there.
Hmm.
But once I understand that, well, yes, that's why you have that fixation, like, because you are made that way. It becomes no longer such an obsession to finding out that
Hmm.
one particular purpose, but more on accepting the fact that, well, I have multiple interests. That's me. It will, I just trust the process that when the time is right, that interest will be the right one.
Yeah, I love that. I love that reflection. I love to say, because I also have an open G center, and it's adaptability, right? Somebody with an undefined G center is somebody I like to think, okay, I'm just adaptable. I could do anything that I want, essentially, right? Because the shadow of that, of having that undefined, is I don't know who I am. Something's wrong with me because I don't know who I am. But to reframe it, or what I do or what I help my clients do, is I'm like, no, it just means you're adaptable. So you could literally do whatever you want, right? So whenever the shadow does come in and I'm like, oh, I don't know my purpose, me too. I see you, I feel you. It's like, I don't know my purpose. What am I doing? I'm like, no, I'm just really adaptable. So let's get clear on like, what brings me joy? What do I actually like doing? Because with that open, you can do whatever you want.
Mm, I so love our conversation so far. Desiree, it has been very juicy and with decolonization with the culture part, spirituality. I feel like this is why I started Asian Fempreneur podcast.
I
Like
love it.
literally.
I love it. And more, again, more Asian women, men, everybody, humans, need to start sharing our voice, right? And just tying the storytelling back to human design again with my upbringing, which I shared earlier. It's, keep your head down. I never shared my story. I never talked. I was rarely vulnerable. I didn't even know how to express my emotions until my late 30s because it was always do, people please, do everything to make everybody happy. And then it took me having to get a divorce to again understand, like, oh my god, I don't even know how to express my emotions. I don't even know. And then feeling so many emotions. And then my journey was I started to use my voice, whereas before it's, oh no, you don't want to bring shame onto the family, and you don't want to, put your dirty laundry. See, it's already shame, dirty laundry out there. It's not dirty laundry, it's your story. Your story is not dirty laundry. And I never used my throat. I never used my throat. Never shared my story. Always stayed back. Always stayed small. And then when I started to share my story, new people, new opportunities, so many beautiful things started to come out into my life. I started a story sharing platform for other women to share their stories, and then fast forward to 5 years later. So again, the kicker for me was sharing my voice, activating and actually using my throat chakra. And then when you look at my human design chart and you look at like where certain gates are, where my Mercury gate is, my Jupiter gate is, my incarnation cross, where my sun gates are, it's all around story sharing and here to use my voice, share my opinions. Like just my incarnation cross alone is I'm here to share my opinions. But think about it, my whole life for almost 4 decades didn't activate that. And things completely took a turn in my life when I started to do it. And my human design validated that that was exactly what I was supposed to be doing or what I am here to do.
So just to confirm here. So you started to do your story sharing platform and everything you're doing right now. Is it before or after you know human design?
Before, yeah. And again, it came from a place I was going through a divorce. And then I said, me and my best friend, we were like, oh, what do we want to do? And we started creating the events from joy. We said, what would bring us happy? And we're like, we like to listen to other women. We like to be in spaces with other women. We like to listen to stories. We want to share our stories. So we're like, okay, again, we created it from a place of joy with no expectation or no intention of it becoming anything. I literally, for the first 2 years, was reading like this, like it was a joke. It became a joke to the community. I'd be like, hello, my name is Desiree, because I wasn't able to do this. This made me super nervous. Talking in front of people made me super nervous. If I wasn't prepared, I was even more nervous. So then again, created this place, and then there was so many powerful things. And then through sharing and letting that energy out through my throat chakra, it allowed me to forgive, to forgive the people that had hurt me in my life. It allowed me to, make amends. And again, just think from an energetic point of view, the energy had just been stagnant in my body, and activating my throat chakra and sharing my story, being vulnerable, really, really shifted so much for me. Yeah, but it started from a place of joy, right? It's like, okay, forget about everything else. What do I want to do that's going to bring me happiness? And it was like, oh, let's organize an event. And then 50 people came, and then everyone's like, when's the next event? And we organized another event, and then we ended up doing 23 or more events. Hundreds of women shared. Other hundreds of women shared. I had shared my story and different stories from my journey at the events, and then it just trickled into so many other beautiful opportunities and things and people. But what was the one thing? It was sharing my voice. And like I
Mm.
mentioned in on my chart, my incarnation cross and my everything, just like Mercury, like where all the numbers are, all the gates are, it's all pointing towards sharing my opinions and my thoughts and story sharing and gathering and listening. And yeah, it's really beautiful. Again, this affirmation that I'm on the right track, right? So whenever I do feel the imposter syndrome or the shadow come up or the what am I doing and the fear, again, we'll look back. The human design chart is this beautiful, like, no, 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 you're like, you're good, like you're good. That's you're in the shadow. I'll look at the shadow side of each gate and I'm like, okay, I'm in the shadow, keep going. So it's a beautiful, that's why I say it's a beautiful tool to help you understand yourself better.
Hmm. Actually, one of the questions I wanted to ask was why human design in particular, but it sounds like you already tell us the answer already.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't to teach; it was to understand my daughter better. I actually
Hmm.
listened to a podcast with Jenna Zoe. Jenna Zoe is the founder of My Human Design, and she was actually explaining her journey. And she said on the podcast, every parent should. So I don't know if you know Jenna Zoe's story, but she
Hmm.
was, yes, she was successful, checked off all the boxes, had the successful company, but then human design came into her life, and then she completely left her life, created her now life, and
Hmm.
she said, I've never felt more aligned. And she said, I suggest that all parents understand human design so that they can help their kids understand themselves sooner. And when I heard that, I was like, ding, 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 ding. So I started getting curious about human design, and I'm a 1-3. So I rabbit holed down human design and then took all of her courses, and then I just started, I started doing readings way before DCI also, right?
Hmm.
And then again, as I mentioned, it helped me understand my daughter. It helped me understand my relationship with my ex-husband. It helped me understand my business partner. It helped me understand like how I wanted to show up in business, how to energet, and then I started to test it all, right? I'm like, oh, let me wait, let me just do me, and then the invitations will come. And they do, you know what I mean? So it's like, again, I've been testing it out and trusting and using human design as this beautiful base. But it started from me being curious, me being excited, and following the joy after hearing Jenna Zoe talk about it and wanting to be a better mother and leading from that place, not from where I am today.
That's a very beautiful way to sum it up. Oh.
Mm, yeah.
Well, Desiree, how can our audience listener find you or if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, you can go on my website, so DesireeRuiz.com, and that's DesireeRuiz.com. I'm also on Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram, and my handle is des dot escalante, and that's Escalante. And why Escalante? That's my middle name, and that's my mother's maiden name. Yeah, and so I'm channeling my grandmother energy with my Instagram handle.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
This will be all in the show notes so you can find them out. But in any case, I really enjoy our conversation today, Desiree. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for the invitation.
Wow, that was a very interesting and juicy conversation with Desiree. We talk about what it means to be decolonize her identity as a Filipina and the relationship between her identity, like her identifying herself as being a Filipina means being a Catholic, but also extending to embracing her spirituality part while still being connected to the community, whether it's her family as well as the community that she built, as well as we talk about a bit about entrepreneurship as well as how she likes or how she choose human design as an aspect or as a tool of a very powerful tool to understand herself, her child, her family, even her clients, really, and just to give them the permission of being themselves, of who they truly are. If you're listening this on YouTube, please do write on the comment what you like about this conversation and what you have learned so far. And I will see you again in our next episode. Bye.